Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. Got a very good friend of mine. Brought to you in partnership with Joe. You should know this. You're a regular listener. In partnership with?
FootJoy.
Well done. You're a FootJoy user, aren't you?
I am a user of FootJoy. Yes, absolutely.
A consumer of the product.
Consumer unashamed fan.
And yeah, you were at our golf day a few months ago, so you got some gleaming white premiers. That was a good day at Blackwell, wasn't it?
Fabulous day. I enjoyed it a great deal.
Yeah. Right, we should cover this off very early doors in the pod. Massive thank you for squeezing us in today.
No problem.
It's a Saturday. We're sat on the Paradise Peninsula.
The PP.
And it was anything but a paradise yesterday. So as a big supporter for tree removal on golf courses, I don't know whether it was karma. I don't know if it's too soon to joke about it, but the storm we had overnight on Thursday this week was just crazy. And very sadly, a tree's come down into the house, hasn't it?
Afraid so. It was something of a shock yesterday morning, early hours. It was about just before 6 a.m. and it felt like somebody grabbed me by the shoulders and jolted me awake as a tree, next door neighbour's tree, had snapped in half, literally in half, an old rotten poplar, and it's a big one. And half of it came down on our roof and has ripped off a good number of tiles and caused a lot of chaos. So that was a bit of fun. Yesterday was spent trying to put things together and sort of make do with what we could and put tarpaulins up and such. I just hope that we don't get a repeat before we have the chance to actually fix it properly, because it could be even worse. Yes.
Few chapters left to run on the home insurance stuff. So, yeah. I mean, look, you know, I'm sure it'll be okay. But yeah, quite scary, isn't it? But that's not the reason we've got you on the pod. No. The reason we're on the podcast today is for something that's really, really exciting. Now, we've been friends for a few years now, and I feel like we could probably waste 20 minutes of preamble, but I'm going to try and resist that because I want to get straight into it, which is the work that you've been leading. And we should do a proper introduction, because I think when you were on the pod ahead of the 151st at Hoylake, you weren't full-time with CDP, or were you then?
Trying to cast my mind back. It might have coincided with when I'd, started in earnest, yeah.
So your job title would be Principal, Associate, Director, Partner, whatever you guys...
That sounds way better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Head of Imagery, as it stands, Head of Imagery for CDP, Clayton de Vries and Pont.
Okay. And it's a growing stable of clients you're working with.
Yes.
And part of this is a big collaborative endeavour on... How are we terming this? Are we calling it simulator golf? Are we calling it virtual architecture?
That's a better term, actually. I would call it virtual architecture, yes. I mean, it's architecture, just plain and simple. But I think the end product is a sort of virtual environment.
Okay.
Shall I take it away from here?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be some people who've got limited experience to simulator golf and some people who will know it intimately well. But what you're building and what you've built, rather, and what will be coming out in the coming weeks is something, you're essentially first to do in this industry, right?
I'd say so, in this particular guise, or at least with this approach. Bit of background was that James Day, our mutual friend who runs Urban Golf, he came to us quite a while back and spoke to us, CDP. James is, we're friends, and he's friends with Sam Cooper as well. And he'd spoken to us in a sort of informal way about, do we have any ideas about how CDP might contribute architecture to the simulator world? Could we build or create courses that could be used on his sims? I think part of the context for that was the simulator golf. If you've got Pebble Beach on your sim, you'll have to pay a royalty for that.
Do you really? Okay.
So that has come in where,
sense.
You're paying fees to use famous courses, and it makes sense, really. I mean, why not?
Pebble are hard up for cash, aren't they? So
strapped.
The royalty fees will be...
Yeah, sizable, I'm afraid. So that, that's just an example, but all the famous courses, they're really the ones you want on your sim, because if someone comes to Urban Golf and says, right, should we play 3 holes, where are you going to pick? And you look down the list and you go Pebble Beach, jumps out at you, the old course maybe. But it makes sense for you to have to pay a fee for that, and I get it. James was saying, how about we capitalise on that, but also instead of instead of us going down the route of saying, well, can we make a sort of Pebble Beach-like experience? What is it that's going to attract people to come and play this above, let's say, Pebble Beach? Why would they want to? And that was the challenge, really. That was the remit. What could we do that was suitably different and attractive that would really pop off a page and get tongues wagging and make it one of the first ones you pick. So that was sort of bubbling away and has been for over a year now. In parallel to that, James came back and said, well, it's Urban Golf's 20th anniversary this year. So he said, what I'd really like to do is in the hallways of the building in Smithfield, he said we've got some very tall walls there. As you go down off the sort of roadside, you come in through the entrance, you go down the stairs, as you know, and you go into the belly of the place, which is this beautiful underground simulator bar. And he said, we've got these great wall spaces that are, we can make more of it. Have you got any ideas for artwork for how we could fill these walls? And he had spoken with, again, our mutual friend Will Eagar, who's a fantastic artist. And he said to Will, have you got any ideas? And then whilst they were having that conversation, they came and said, should we speak to Joe and see if we can put together something which is like a cohesive design, which isn't just standalone pictures that look nice. It was like, could we make it sort of knit together and work? So it becomes more of a sort of, this isn't just a picture of something golf related, it's a proper course. Could we design something that takes the visitor, the punter from the street and guides them through this sort of course that goes down the stairs and around the corners through the hallway and takes you into the bar. So we said, brilliant, yeah, sounds like a great challenge. And then he said, do you know, can we get Cooper involved and get his brain on it? And we said, yeah, brilliant, let's get Sam involved. So between the three of us, the trio, we have now concocted a sort of cohesive, for now, 6-hole golf course. We hope to extend to the full 18 once we've sort of got our feet under the table.
A lot of good courses have been ruined by getting to 18 holes, Joe,
well, there
so just
you go.
Be careful. It will create routing challenges.
Indeed. 6 might just be the Goldilocks number for simulator golf particularly. But anyway, the idea was from going from just this concept of artwork has now become a fully all singing, all dancing, actual playable golf course, or is in the process of being converted into playability for James's Sims. So yeah, we've designed this 6-hole course, which we can go into the detail of in a minute. But the whole thing was like, okay, well, from artwork, can we turn it into a playable, living, breathing entity that can be used on the Sims?
Because we should say this is different than building a fictional golf course and calling it Rocky Canyon and making 6 holes and it being the computer is going from tee to green and then you get to the next tee and there's another. This is essentially the creation of an entire virtual world that this course resides in, which we're going to go into shortly. But you're basically creating landscapes that are very, very different and, kind of like, yeah, it's Fjordlands, right? Is one we're going to talk about.
Working title Fjordlands.
Fjordlands, which may change, but by the side, just caveat that. But it's but you imagine a landscape that is totally unique, and you have all the lines of the surroundings and the hillsides and everything, and then you're almost routing a course within that, right? It's different than to saying I'm going to draw 6 holes that we essentially want to build here.
Yeah, I think to be absolutely clear, with the popularity and growing popularity of things like AI, we've all seen those popular posts that come up on something like Instagram, which is this, imagine you tell the AI, generative AI, I want to see a golf course in Grand Canyon, or I want to see a golf course in Central Park. I mean, Tiger Woods Golf used to have it on their video games, didn't they? You play in Central Park or these fictional courses. And that's fine. That was good and good fun. But that's not what we're doing. We wanted to absolutely get the very best out of this sort of shackleless approach to designing what we think is a great course. You know that simulator golf tends to come with a few drawbacks, that you don't have wind blowing in your face. You don't have necessarily a significant change in the surface that you're playing from with the ball. You're not coming out of real sand, for example. So there's certain small caveats to how we approach the design for simulator-specific golf. And also, just to make the point clear, we know that in parallel we've got the indoor TGL about to get going. I know it's been delayed due to the accident they had with the dome. I think it collapsed or something. So anyway, that's been bubbling away. But I think those guys, their remit has been to build what they think is going to create a great stage for elite professional golf.
Yeah.
Very top of the range. We know how far they hit the ball. So different to an amateur, especially an amateur who's got a 6 pints down him and her and is swinging wildly at the ball.
You've been to the urban Christmas party with Cookie Jar, and you know how bad the golf can get down there.
We know. So we're trying to make golf holes that work for that type of golf. That we're working in that range. Sure, there'll be people who can hit the ball 350 yards occasionally, but we're trying to work with amateur golfers and make the best possible holes for them. The other thing is with simulated golf, not only do we have to think about options and strategy, we want to make the most beautiful possible setting for the golf course, or at least what we think will work in that respect. So when we were putting our heads together about how we do this, we thought, well, would we be missing a trick if we didn't have, let's say, 6 different environments? Because we're not bound by a routing. We don't need to get to and from a clubhouse. We don't need to have drinks at the turn, all this sort of stuff. We don't need to have 2 par 3s and 3 par, whatever it is. So anyway, we put our heads together and we said, should we have 6 different environments, 6 different biomes? And we thought, actually...
Using terms like biomes that most of our listeners will not be familiar with.
Okay, so in sort of 3D
like
gaming...
an ecosystem, is it?
Yeah, in a 3D world, you're basically creating a planet, let's say. So it might be a jungle, or it might be, a bit... Think of Star Wars when it started branching out, sort of lava planets and such. So should we have 6? And then actually what occurred to us was that Sam Cooper, who some of your listeners may have seen, is off on his travels again up to the northern part of the mainland of Europe, which is in Norway. And he was thinking, I've been doing so much research about this place and where to stop and all these sort of beauty sites and such, that he said, how about we use that as our canvas? So we create this fjord-based world, this biome, and we incorporate all the most fantastic bits of it. It's a bit like, you look at it, it's like Lord of the Rings on steroids, just incredible. And it's got water, it's got tall mountain peaks, it's got rock forms, everything else that would most likely not really make for good golf in the real world. So we thought, imagine if you take real world LiDAR landscape data, but instead of taking these mountains, which are thousands of feet high, you actually just scale it down. Or imagine the player being scaled up by a degree of whatever, 100. And then all of a sudden, these huge, vast gaps of water might turn into something which is more like 250 yards of distance.
And stuff like that.
So everything, if you scale it down by a certain amount, becomes like, oh, wow, this is like finding the best sort of golf land, island hopping, everything else that you can imagine, except all we've had to do is dial it down by 100, factor of 100. So we've taken, in certain places, real-world data. There's one of the holes that we've created called North Cape, which is Nordkap. So Nordkap is where Sam is on his travels to, at the very northern tip of the mainland of Norway.
That LiDAR data has come directly from there, then?
So some of the data that we view, the landscape data, has come from Nordkap, and we've made it as a par 3. So it's a Cape hole. It's Nordkap. It's a Cape hole. It's a heroic par 3 where you either choose to go the full distance to a green that is, its axis is the shallow. It's across you, so it's wide and shallow. Or you go around the sort of circuitous route, which would probably secure you an easier 3 if that's what you need in the match. To a long axis of the green, so you're playing your chip down the long axis. So it's a heroic shot, and if you need to win the hole, or you think you need a 2 to whatever it is, you've got a tenner on it, or you've got drinks on it, or whatever it is, then that's the jeopardy. So that's just a par 3. What we try to do is get what is quite difficult to do in the real world is actually create a strategic par 3s. You don't get many of them these days, do you?
No.
Let's be real.
No.
It's a one shot and done.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of approach we've taken. We know that we like having par 3s in there, but in reality, every single shot in every single one of the holes needs to have a level of jeopardy and choice associated with it. Every shot.
Yeah, there's 3 schools of architecture, aren't there? You've got penal, strategic, and I guess more recently heroic in the 70s, 80s, 90s. But heroic is still strategic architecture. Do you go for it or not? And there's something about simulator golf. Maybe that's because we're not playing medal cards on simulators. I don't know why it is, but it does set up well. When we have our Christmas party at Urban, we play the 17th at Sawgrass. it kind of, for some reason, seems to lend itself to drama. And you're in a world where you can tear up the rule book and completely invent things. I've seen things in some of that with, almost like a stone archway, and it's like, oh, you can almost imagine, like, do you know what, if you put your drive there, you can sort of play over or even under that and run it along. You can be as creative as you want, because every architect until now has been bound by what the natural land gives them. So you can only really work with that, as you know. But this allows you to create the landscape that you want to then place the golf holes on.
That's it. Essentially, we're not bound by greenkeeping teams. We don't need 400 greenkeepers to maintain these vast areas of mown grass. We aren't bound by sizes of greens and other traditional problematic.
You're not worried about the irrigation budget whatsoever,
not
are you?
Really, I don't think we need any irrigation, in fact. No budget required. And the only things, coming back to an earlier point, was certain things like bunkers need to have tall faces in the virtual space, because you're playing off a perfect lie on a mat. James was like, actually, it'd be better if the bunker faces are taller than they would be in the real world, because it makes it more of a challenge, because you're not dealing with a surface or whatever imperfections. But generally speaking, there were no constraints whatsoever. So what do you do if you're starting completely from scratch and you're building not for a computer game where somebody's using a controller, where they get very good at it and all of a sudden it's very easy for them. We're not doing a video game like that. We're creating a playground for somebody with a real life club with a few pints inside them, who just wants to have some serious fun. Fun is probably the most overused word in golf architecture these days. I think it's the hot buzzword. What is fun? That's personal and subjective, but I think on balance what you want from fun is replayability, something that causes discussion pre, during and post the playing of the hole. Do you come away with a tingle sensation, like, I just want to play that again? Does it make you want to share the news with somebody else? Do you come away and you say, I've got to tell everybody about this, it's just the best? So those could be some definitions of what I think is fun, particularly in this space. So, I mean, as I said earlier, I think every single shot on every single hole, you're basically never out of the hole, because you can make, I'm not using the word par in these things, because, roughly speaking, we've got what might be a 2-shot hole, rather than being a par 4, I think, as our friend Dan Davis would say, is a vulgar term. Vulgar term. It's retrograde.
Designed to match play golf course.
Yes. So it is a match play golf course. And also, I don't want to go down the path of saying, it's designed for match play. It's like, well, it is, but any good hole is a good hole, regardless of what format you're playing on it. So, we're creating holes that will keep everyone playing right till the bitter end, can produce thrills and spills, because you might choose on the tee. Think about this, on simulator golf, you are, by default, the system will choose an angle that it sets you off at. But looking to your left and looking to your right, actually away from the sort of centre line of whatever it lines you up on, you'll see, I can see that I can go left there. If I look at the top-down map and study this hole before I play it, there's more to it than just wailing away on a straight shot. It's like, I could go down the left route, I can go down the right route, and if I don't execute, let's say, if I hit a wild one, which is quite common, then you say, well, what am I going to do now? Yeah. Best laid plans and all, but now I've got to change tack because I've not executed what I thought I was going to do.
Because you played down the right of Dornoch 7 famously. I think the club has
just how
immortalised you on the
plaque?
Walls, haven't they? And, in a real world example, that's quite a painful walk.
Yeah, the legs were starting to burn.
In a simulator world, actually, it probably opened up some decent lines, I can imagine.
Absolutely, yeah. Strategic. Take all the bunkers out of it. But
again, that's another consideration, that you don't have to think about walking. You don't have to think about the distance. And I guess, in some ways it's liberating, but I can also imagine it's kind of over-facing, because you end up with, I always think, when you go to Tesco Extra, like a really big supermarket, it's more painful than going to a smaller supermarket.
The distance between items.
Yeah, and also
miles.
The choice.
Yeah.
It's an over-facing amount of choice of what's to do. So how does the creative process work of, initially those 6 holes, how do you then whittle it down to, this is how we're going to do it? Because if you're not going to say, I want 2 3s, 2 4s, 2 5s, and, it must be quite tricky to think, you could go in any number of ways with this, right?
Yes, absolutely. When it's a completely clean slate, it can be sometimes having some sort of, not shackles, but some constraints and some real world landscape can actually make things easier and quicker to come up with. But crucially, we wanted to make, again, using the word par is probably wrong, but half par holes where on a yardage basis, as the crow flies, we wanted things to sit within a sort of half a shot range to make it as interesting as possible. The elevation, so when you're working with landscape that doesn't exist, so you're going completely from scratch, drawing from top down, so in a map format, you know that essentially you want, if you were to draw a line, a shot line from tee to hole, you want to be able to draw as many possible routes from that tee to that green as possible. Yeah, okay. You want hundreds for it to be in our what we consider a viable option for a hole. Hundreds. So even on a short hole, like a traditional, say, one-shotter, there still have to be tens of ways that the person can play the hole. Tens. Otherwise, we've missed the soul of what we're trying to achieve with these designs.
It should feel different to an ordinary golf course, shouldn't it?
Absolutely.
It should feel like you've taken an ordinary golf hole and put it on steroids, shouldn't it? It should feel like every hole should feel like Cape Kidnappers, I guess.
Completely,
really.
Yeah, or I mean, dare I say it, kind of better for the simulated world. Changes in elevation that don't perhaps exist at Kidnappers because you're sort of playing on the finger of land. You don't get any change in elevation. We were like, well, what if you take Kidnappers where it's death on left and right, completely gone, but you've still got like bunkers in the centre of the fairway. You've got sort of hills that are deliberately kickers. I mean,
you can have really extreme ramps.
Completely.
Insane features that might exist in, like you say, in the fjords and in that kind of crazy landscape that wouldn't naturally exist in Oxfordshire.
Not at all. I mean, we're all geeks, right? And we just love the ground game. If we can make it a viable, attractive option, not just ground game because it looks nice when the sun's dipping low and you go, oh, isn't that nice? I could hit this with a 4-iron and send it over the lumps and bumps. When in reality, if you want the best score, it's probably just to loop one straight next to the hole. So in virtual world, we want aerial to be an option. Sure, if you're island hopping and you've got a sort of shallow target to hit for, then it should be, the jeopardy should be high, but you can still float one up high and get it to land soft and hit let's say, some sort of island in the middle of the water because it's the shortest route to the hole. However, it might be a longer route to the hole, let's say, along the left side, but we want people to see that this vast ramp, which kind of feeds the ball in around the back of the green, is a truly viable option, albeit you're playing it with a 3-wood, a fairway wood, or a long iron. Whereas in the other one, you're playing a sort of 8-iron over to this island. We want these options to truly be a good way to get to the hole and not just a novelty that nobody's going to use,
there should be like the ability to, like you say, take on extreme risk at the most extreme end, but it might allow you to get to within 10 feet on a par 6 if you pull it off.
Exactly. Again, par 6,
and that's the
whatever,
and that's the excitement, isn't it? You could tee it up, you hit it into the top of a canyon, but there's a pathway that the ball will literally every time just run down, and it'll find its way 600 yards further down there, and nestled next to the green, and you're like,
I mean, you can call it crazy golf if you want. That's fine. It would be doing it a disservice, I think, because crazy golf is very much deliberately designed with pipes and tubes and everything else, whereas this is, we're using landforms that have a similar effect on the ball if you find exactly the right spot. But because you're not using a putter, you're using a driver or you're using a 3-iron or something, it's a real challenge to find that slot, but we put them out there. In gaming terms, you probably call it Easter eggs. But it comes
like
with,
when you could jump the fence on Mario Kart,
there you
on
go.
like Wario Stadium or whatever,
through the rainbow
jump
island
off the
or something,
of the
through the cave
thing
or something,
and down to the next.
Exactly. That stuff, and that's gold because it comes to repeat players and it comes from word of mouth. So if everybody says at Urban Golf, they say, "Have you played Fjordlands yet?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I played it once." It's like, you've got to play it twice. Next time you're there, go down the left on the third hole because it'll kick your ball all the way in 300 yards, and it'll feed into the green, and that's your way to go. That's the play. So that's what we're hoping for, is that repeat play, keep people coming back, word of mouth, Easter eggs, new things to find every time, especially if you're willing to look left or right off the tee, explore the maps, get a feel for what it is that you're being asked to do before you hit your tee shot. That's the goal.
There a world where you could also turn it on its head, this technology? Is there like a world where you could, another key thing that you do with your job is consulting with clubs on restoration. Is there a world where you could create what Woolley Park Junior left on the old course before Colt at Sunningdale, or you could build Huntercombe as it was, or you could go to. Do you know what? Right? You could build. You could do Ryan's restoration at the Addington. In an afternoon. And is there a world where you could almost take some of this stuff and apply it? I'm sure there's obviously time and stuff to do it, but is that something that you think you'd ever see, like being able to?
I have to say, I think the industry is moving towards that space. I don't think. Okay, to be quite clear, I think when it comes to designing surfaces, I think yes, there is a way to take surfaces that are designed in 3D. I mean, they have been in the past with people moving contour lines and things like that, but now with modern tech the way it is, you can actually sculpt quite convincing looking, like for like, real world looking landscapes, and then you can port them into the real world if you're using the correct dozers and the correct operators and everything else, using what I think is the RTX, very highly accurate geolocated technology. You can actually build digitally sculpted surfaces in the real world very closely.
Which is pretty much how they built the Lido, isn't it?
Almost, I think. You'd have to speak to Brian himself and Tom Doak, but I think Brian Schneider had quite a lot to do with that, and it might be doing him a disservice to actually say it was all like plug and play and paint by numbers.
But there was an element of that, wasn't there? But I just sort of thought, as well as building something completely futuristic and different and a completely new landscape, you could also take an existing golf course and then project and change the mowing lines and where the bunkers are, and you would literally have Sunningdale from the 1920s there, and that's. It's like, oh wow, doesn't this course play differently from a bit shorter and a lot wider?
Oh, for sure. I think but there are so many things in the real world of golf that are it's hard to put your finger on exactly why it might work for real world versus virtual and vice versa. And I would not say that you can build a fantastic golf course that can be done by robots. I don't think that's the case. I don't want it to be the case.
Yeah,
I don't think.
No.
Although I love the digital sort of advancements that we're getting into these days, I would think it a great shame that if we thought we could plug and play digitally created stuff without any human intervention whatsoever.
Is there a world where it perhaps democratizes hole design a little bit? Does it enable people to, things like the Lido competition each year? It actually creates an ability to go, well, this is really interesting. Do you know what? Let's create all of these. Or, is there a world where simulator bars and stuff, it's like you can pay an amount and we'll build your golf hole for you and you can go and play that. And, there's space for it almost, isn't there?
That's a great idea. Coming back to the thing you said about the Lido competition, that was sort of the loose inspiration for how we're approaching the artwork installations at James's Urban Golf entrance. So we said to James, how about we do 6 Lido competition entries, basically. But they all sort of, because they're thematically linked, they come down the hallway and they take you from hole 1, 2, 3 and 4. And they look a little bit like a Lido competition. So you will have seen Will's artwork before. He's so good and has such a cool, recognisable style. And we said, well, how about Will puts together this lovely hand-drawn map, to scale, of course, proper hand-drawn map, a bit like a Lido competition entry. And then from these maps, we will have call-out vignettes of the 3D rendered holes, which Will has put together in Unreal Engine using techniques that he's been developing for the last 20 years. Combined with the surfaces that I've created. So I designed the playing surfaces and sculpted them all, handed them to Will, and Will has then populated them and put them into this world that he's created, this biome, these fjords. And the sort of combination has created this Lido competition entry looking thing with notes that I've written on each of the features, like the greens and everything else. So the whole process has been Sam and I and everybody else, and James as well, have collaborated on ideas for what would make a good hole. And then I've taken that and sculpted the hole itself and then handed that to Will.
What, kind of like done like a crude digital version of it using, or LiDAR? Saying crude probably insults your work.
It absolutely 100% does.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not crude in the slightest. It's highly detailed. Wash your mouth out, sir.
I'm going to persist with crude. So you do these crude LiDAR things that are insanely accurate. But you will use... So you have a tool that allows you to basically manipulate contours on maps, and you're almost building something, a digital version perhaps of like how Simpson would have built with plasticine years ago. You'll create the contours of that golf hole, and then Will then plugs that into a landscape which he then builds in this thing. There's probably a lot of people glazing over at this point with Unreal Engine, which is like a sort of a platform that video games are built on that enables very, very high level of detail.
Yes.
And also allows it to create a very realistic environment.
Yes. So it lets
simulator bars have always been like, early days of this stuff, like yellow discs and green. So, I remember the first ever like PGA Tour EA Sports game in like, I'm going to say like 93, 94. Like that,
it looks so bad now.
But it's the capability of building detail, right? That's the issue, right?
It's essential. I mean, when it comes to visualizing anything in 3D, there are a whole raft of different pieces of software that can do this. And, whatever tool you happen to choose is up to you. It's your own personal tastes and whatever. But for Will, Unreal Engine has allowed him to work quickly, but also the end product can be rendered into video very fast because Unreal Engine is super clever and has amazing tech under the hood. But Will has managed to harness it in such a way that he can not only create something which passes for real world and works in real time, as it's known, but also enables him to create his artistic, highly artistic visuals. So this isn't just I've got a fairway and a tee and a green and a mountain in the distance. It's like, this is evocative, really, really beautiful, handsome visuals with completely playable golf holes. So the whole cocktail of ingredients has been seriously long thinking, concocting these holes, designing them properly to scale with the right carry distances and everything else. Then me creating surfaces that should be playable.
Crudely.
Very crude surfaces,
crude,
real
detailed,
rough and ready stuff, which then can be ported into Unreal Engine as your sort of starting canvas, if you like, and then Will just builds on it and creates these visuals which are so kind of, they just make you shudder.
How does he physically do that? Because Will, his claim to fame is that he designed the cookie jar Christmas card last year.
Exactly, that's the top of his CV.
Because Will came to an event of art. I mean, he's. You can actually appreciate his talent. I suppose it's like not being a musician and listening to like whatever Stratovarius or whatever it would be, and being like, it's kind of lost on me. Like all I know is it's like, wow, this stuff looks impressive. Quite how good, because you understand the technical limitations and how he's actually making it. But he came to an event of ours. I hope you don't mind me saying, last year, and he sort of been around golf most of his life, but not played loads. Met a couple of people. I seem to remember you and him played together at Minchinhampton actually in our retro event.
We stuck around afterwards and went out
I was
with
like,
and
this guy's. I think this guy's definitely going to get on well with you, Joe.
Yeah. No, it was instant. We had a mutual understanding from the word go.
Insanely talented and such a nice guy.
Oh, he's a top bloke. I think Will is one day might wake up out of bed and realise how good he is.
You think that's the danger?
Maybe that's the danger. Maybe I think he's just he's a proper artist. He is a true creator, and I think look out for his name in the future, very near future, because I think he might be entering the golf space on a more permanent basis.
You think he might be out of our price range for the Christmas cards this year?
I would say
I'm not having one of your crude drawings on ours.
No, the crude stuff won't wash. You might have to do a little Patreon or whip round or something.
Celebs will not accept the low standard of Christmas card. No. How is he physically doing it? Is he painting this stuff?
Well, I know that Will likes to use a mixture of softwares for the various outputs.
There's plants and colours and I don't understand like. He's not He's not typing it in analog, or binary or whatever, is he? He's got to do something physically with his hands.
He draws it. I mean, on some of his artwork, if you go on his social media stuff, you'll see that some of the artwork is very not traditional, but it's very much artwork. It's loose. It's evocative. It's like painterly, and he uses a stylus on a tablet with Procreate. But I think when it comes to the stuff that we've done for the urban artwork and the urban simulator stuff, it's purely built in Unreal. I mean, there's various bits and bobs that he's used to plug into that, but the Unreal Engine has been the the way that we've delivered. When it comes to the maps, the hand-drawn maps, that's where the tablet work has come in. So that's hand-drawn.
Okay.
So when you see it in the flesh and you see it on the walls at Urban, that is Will hand-drawing those maps.
Incredible. And these are going to be basically exclusive at Urban Golf, these holes. So
Yes.
this is going to be... this doesn't exist, right, anywhere, as far as I know, in simulator golf world. The goal is to start releasing these. You said you're at 6 holes. Can you maybe give us a little bit of a sneak behind the curtains on what people can expect as these things start to come out, and a bit of a sense for how they play and how they're different? You mentioned Nordkapp, being this sort of, kind of cape hole with the...
Yeah.
And I think I've seen it with that little slither of fairway out on the right. But then there's 5 others. Give us a little bit of a teaser on some of this.
I'm trying to remember. We've got Trollveggen, which is Norwegian
Sounds like
for
Game of Thrones stuff.
Does
this.
a bit, doesn't it? Yeah, it's Troll Wall is the literal translation, and this is a hole that plays down the water side and has this almost vertical rock form that just leaps out of the fairway, and then you can either hug this rock form, which is the sort of closest proximity to the hole, fastest journey to the hole, but of course is littered with peril along the way, and then there's a sort of island out to the right which gives you the best line into the green if you're playing with a long club, which you will be, but it's got bunkers guarding the entrance of the hole, so actually going out to the right gives you, takes the bunkers out of play. And then there's the sort of more circuitous tortoise route, which is up and over a big brow of a hill on the left side of this Trollveggen rock form, and it's out of sight. It's a blind drive, but it's up a hill, huge elevation lift. But then if you get to the top, the apex of the hill, it'll run, and you'll get a lot of run on it, albeit it'll take you further away from the hole to the left side, but then your approach comes round this huge hairpin style kicker, a bit like a velodrome, and you'll...
A bit like Century Tournament of Champions or whatever, that par 4 that DJ, they get it, and it's, once it starts running, the ball's gravity's taking it all the way.
Carvalhour, is it?
Yeah.
And... but yeah, this is the sort of multi-directional options that we're looking for. The longer the hole gets, we hope that the more possibilities there are, the more sort of combinations, permutations of shots that you can take to get to the green. But as I say, the key message is that on all of these holes, there needs to be multiple ways that you stand over the ball and you go, oh, well, I thought I was going to do this, but now I need to do this, or now I can do this. So, it's like opening a box of tricks every time you step up to the ball. Trollveggen's a hole, North Cape. We've got one called the Abyss. Abyss is these sort of... have you ever seen the film Up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's loosely based on South American, like near Angel Falls.
Okay, where it's like hot air balloon stops on top of the rock.
Exactly. And you remember,
and the dogs and all that stuff.
The dogs, that's it. So they're on top of this Paradise Falls, they call it. So it's like Angel Falls. And you've got these clouds. You're so high up on these sort of spears of rock. They've got plateau tops, but then fall off on all sides, and it's just this sort of clouds where you're above the cloud line. So in Abyss, if you miss the playing surfaces, your ball is lost. But they're very, very generous playing surfaces, and it's like these fissures that go between these plateaus. So actually, there are loads of ways you can get to the hole, and there's loads of ways you can lose your ball. But the landing surfaces are massive. So really, unless you hit a completely awful shot, you should be in the hole no matter where you've hit it. But constantly you're having to reevaluate what your plan is to get to the green if you don't quite execute what you thought you were going to execute.
And you would then be looking at yardages and where to play your
precisely,
next. So it's like a case of navigating your way to
completely
way to be.
And we very much hope that people don't look at a length of a hole and say, okay, well, as the crow flies, this is 560 yards, therefore it's a par 5. It's like, no. Seriously, you can halve this hole in 10, or someone can make a 3, and they'll be getting drinks all night because it's ludicrous. So that's the aim of the game, really. We've got another short hole called the Flick, which is hopefully the name conjures up what it is. It's just a short hole, but by virtue of having a long tee, which is set diagonally, and a long green, again, diagonally set in a different direction, you can extend the hole to somewhere like 200 yards rather than 100, depending on flag position and tee position. But the strategy of this hole is that if when you stand on the tee, you see this yawning bunker cut into the face of the green, and it looks like the most obvious jeopardy of the hole. Whereas actually, if you explore the map, it's got this big long fairway tail that comes off the back of the green and swoops down to about 50 meters below the putting surface. So actually, if you go long, and the traditional right-handed golfers miss is long left or short right will get you in the bunker, and it'll be a tough up and down. But long left will go all the way down this sort of chute and end up at the bottom of this.
120 yards up the
So you've got a longer approach than you had from the tee. You're still in the hole. You haven't lost your ball or anything, but you've got a long approach up a hill to try and stop it on a green whose axis is shallow to you from that angle. So all of these things are sort of included in these holes. These have been the mantras. It's like, how can we just keep everyone in the hole but make them have to change their mind, you know?
It's magical stuff. Any landscapes you want to build? And is there anything where you're like, oh, I've done the fjords now, I'd love to see what...
Oh my God, so many. Fjords is beautiful because it has that sort of sea, you know, it's got water, it's got islands, it's got trees.
Would you always want it to be natural, or would you ever be like, I mean, would you ever take, you know, you want to build something on Mars? I mean, I suppose it kind of just becomes a bit fantastical after a point, does it?
Idea one that we shelved relatively quickly was because it was urban golf, and because they're in London.
Playing streets or across tops of buildings and stuff.
I've got a model of London on my computer upstairs. I might share that actually afterwards. I'll share it with you. We didn't come to design any holes on it, but I just got the model of London, put it together, and we were like, right, here's our canvas. And then we decided...
The actual topo map of London.
Yeah, in 3D with buildings and things. So it was kind of shelved early on because we thought it was a little bit tricked up. We originally thought, could we play from, say, the East End down the sort of Thames side, hopping over the Thames? You know, play it at scale, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah,
if we change
but if you make the Thames, but you change the scale of it,
yeah,
so because
it's 100 yards instead of 1,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, we thought that would be a good idea, playing down the streets and working your way to Urban Golf's front entrance, 6 holes that get you from the East End all the way to there, going past all the landmarks, maybe with the physics of the game, playing off buildings and using concrete, having it bounce in the way that it would off real concrete. Yeah. But yeah, we shelved that in favour of something which was less novelty and more of like just gobsmacking. Yeah. Just make it absolutely stunning. And that was, with Will involved, it would be missing a trick not to involve him in that, because his landscapes are just to die for. So cool.
And has anyone played these yet in a simulator sense?
Not yet.
They've got to be plumbed in, presumably, into the simulator technology, testing periods and everything. They've been designed, I'm guessing by the time this release is released, there'll be some visuals out there which we'll point towards. We'll probably be able to put them on our social and stuff.
I'd hope so.
And it's exciting times. What else have you got going on? Oh,
lots cooking. As always in golf, there's usually little that we can speak of without getting wrists slapped.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like is it hard balancing number of projects at a time, or do you generally have like 2 or 3 things on the go? Is it quite easy to compartmentalise them?
There are lots of things that bubble away on different timescales and different levels of delivery date. So... yeah, I suppose like with any multiple project business, you try and work out a way to sensibly tackle projects that, I personally find it very difficult to have 5 things, literally 5 things that I switch between in a day or even in a week, because I like to focus quite hard on what I'm working on. But yes, it's pretty common to have multiple parallel activities happening.
Good. And how's your game?
My game?
Are you playing a lot? Because obviously coming out of work and... We touched on this before the pod. Like August is like a perfect month to have a bit of a time off, because a lot of it's maintenance anyway, and holidays and kids and stuff. But does it feel different than when you were doing it as an enthusiast as a stretch, because it was way beyond that. But it wasn't the core role, the core job, right?
No. Since getting into golf in a full-time capacity, I play less golf than even I did before. Albeit in stretches. My wife would just scoff if she were in this room right now. But the reality is...
she hasn't got a right reply because she's not here.
No,
so
exactly.
You can... Don't worry, the violins are going.
Exactly. So, no, I play in pockets of activity of golf. So I might travel somewhere and play a few days on the bounce. But generally speaking, I have nothing regular in my diary that gets me out there. So golf is intermittent. And my play is... Intermittent would be generous. The quality is is mixed.
As per Door Knock story.
Well, there you go. My ability to miss the planet with the driver is second to.
Because the rest of the game's great, isn't it? It's the ability to throw an outrageously wild one in with the big dog.
Really can miss them. Simon Haynes, again, a mutual friend.
You were in Scotland with him recently.
Yes, we were up recently in Scotland, which was great. Also via Appleby, as you will well know, is a fantastic trip. Yeah, gosh,
it's like the 15th hole is like...
It's ludicrous.
Yeah, you could rebuild that in a simulator sense and be like, that's one way you think about...
That's it.
Bell, is it Bell? Bell. It's an incredible golf hole.
What a hole! What a place! We were knocked out.
It's really good, isn't it?
Really cool.
It's one of the few sort of like last bastions of great £35 golf that exist.
Brilliant.
Like it's sustainable, raw, stimulating.
Yeah, everything else. We got to a couple of the holes where you think, Christ, when this was designed, you think of the Hickory players going up that hill, with all the ferns on the bank.
11 or 10 or something
it's
like that.
Quite early in the round, actually. The 11, I think I remember the ones you're talking about, but actually earlier in the round,
the fern bank.
Yeah, fifth hole, I think. You
Is
play
it
up the
fifth?
chasm. Yeah, it's like...
Yeah, sorry, because it's one loop, isn't it?
Yeah, like an uphill version of the Berkshire Red 10th hole where you're playing across that sort of chasm, the big slope. So instead of it being heather, it's just ferns.
I think I hit 3 wood and I barely got the lift on the ball I needed.
Yeah, because it's a massive elevation change, isn't it? You really got to get up the hill. So imagine with hickories, you're thinking, can I actually get this up there?
Yeah.
How do I get there? So it must have been a real heroic course back in the day. But yeah, highly recommended to all. But Simon Haynes said to me, seriously, you've got to shorten your swing. Because the randometer, the random chance associated with a long swing like that might have been fine if you're playing every day of the week, but when you play every now and then, the lurking misery that comes from playing with a long...
Haynes doesn't really get it much past 9 o'clock,
No,
does he,
never gets past knee height, really, does it?
But it's highly repeatable.
Very effective indeed. But, he's taking the mickey and he was like, do you think it's time you might, address your swing? And I was like, oh, God, yeah, all right. So I'm trying to shorten it. Oh, well, he's a scumbag, isn't he? But I had to address the swing, so I'm trying to shorten it and see if I can keep some balls on the planet for a change.
Any parting wisdom? Would you do anything differently with this simulator stuff if you'd embarked on it again? Because it's an exciting thing you've done.
It's really exciting.
You, Will, Sam and James.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And it's like once you've started down that path, you've made that's...
Yeah.
It's just... Yeah.
It's thrilling. And I think it does open up a world of possibilities. As you say, different biomes, different worlds, landscapes, different approaches to where the holes might be set. But I think fundamentally the approach to the holes and the architecture and the theory and the strategy behind each is transferable because... unless somebody's going to think, I hate the word term think outside the box, but blue sky thinking, the sort of corporate cheesy nastiness, the thinking, it's hard to think how simulators as they are today. I know the Indoor Golf League has this sort of dynamic green machine and everything else,
going to work.
High budget stuff, I'm not sure, but that's that's specific to them, and that's maybe the way that simulation might change. Simulator golf, different surfaces, I don't know, heaven forbid, different clubs, different balls, I don't know, but as it stands, simulator golf, the thinking that's gone into these holes that we've designed, I would say is probably transferable regardless of what it looks like on the screen. The best approach to these holes is to give the player loads of options and just say, go for it. And next time you come back, play it differently. And the time after that, play it differently.
Joe McDonnell, second time on the pod. Great as ever. And thank you for having us. And I'm sure all of our listeners are wishing you the very best of luck with the roof damage.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks very much. It's been fun.
Adios.
Adios.
Watch this.